Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Careers Mare podcast. With me, Jacob, and with my colleague Jordan, we get a different guest on every week, and we talk about what they've done in the past, what they wanted to do when they grew up, what they currently do, and then at the end, we design them their dream job. I'm here with Mr. Jordan Andrews, my esteemed co-interviewer. How are you doing,
I'm
Jordan?
good, mate. I'm very, very good. Work's been good. Obviously, we've had a nice bit of weather recently, which has been lovely. And I'm just excited to get stuck in to this episode, chatting to a special boy, a nuclear boy.
A nuclear man?
A nuclear man. Once a nuclear boy, now a nuclear man. They say that, don't they, Jacob? There's a saying, isn't there? Twice a nuclear baby, once a nuclear man.
And then you climb the nuclear hill to the nuclear retirement home, and then you shuffle off the nuclear coil.
And then you go to that big nuclear factory in the sky.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to talk to Harry because if there was one thing that was really missing from the first episode of the podcast, sorry, Charlie, it was the middle of some atoms.
It was. But I'm just so happy that now we get to find out about the middle of some atoms. We get to talk to someone who's full of them, who's packed to the brim with atoms, and he knows about all of them as well.
He knows about all of them. Are you sure?
He told me he could name every atom in his body,
Oh.
and I'd have to take his word for it.
Actually, Jordan, before we get started, I think we should both say what our favourite atom is. I'll go first. I really like the atom that is at the exact centre of Susan Boyle.
Oh,
What do you think?
I really like the atomic kitten.
Ah.
That's my favourite atom.
So we've both gone down a musical route then. I think that says a lot about us, is that we have music in the soul.
Yeah. Songs in the key of life is what flows through us.
Was that one of theirs? Atomic Kitten, did they do songs in the key of life?
Yeah, that was their seminal album actually, with songs in the key of life.
Can you name the members of Atomic Kitten?
Well, Kerry Katona. I
Was
don't
she
know
in
the
it?
others. Yeah, Kerry
Okay.
Katona was in it. Yeah, I don't know the others.
Because I would have thought that logically they would be the Atomic Kittens, but they're not, are they? And actually, I'm really undermining myself because when I tried to think of another band apart from the Spice Girls, I thought of Destiny's Child, but that's obviously also in the singular.
Yeah,
So,
but then you've got the Saturdays.
do you? Who are they?
Yeah, the Saturdays. They're a pop group. I want to say like 2010s, start of 2010s.
I've heard of them.
They had Frankie Bridge. She was the lead singer, had the short sort of pixie cut, and I well fancied her when I was younger.
And now you're married.
And and I can't believe it worked out. And I got to marry every single atom in her body, and and the vicar had to name them all. I demanded that he did.
Well, for those of you struggling to picture that scene, we're about to have a similar scene coming up now with Harry, so get strapped in for some atom naming as we welcome
Harry Stevenson.
Welcome, Harry, to the Careers Mare podcast. We're going to go, of course, through what you do currently and what your dream job is, but we're going to start, as we often do, by asking, what was your first ever job?
Well, I guess on a technicality, my first ever job would be volunteering in a charity shop, which I needed to get into a part of like doing Duke of Edinburgh. You needed to do like a skill, a sport, and then you had to do some form of volunteering. So I volunteered down at the local charity shop on the high street back home, which was...
Thank you for your service, Harry.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you want to shout out the charity?
Sue Ryder. They're now closed back home, so they must have been doing terribly without me.
What was your like day-to-day work? Were you on the tills or stacking shelves or sorting through donations, or what was it?
I think it was a mixture of just sorting through donations and going on the till and then kind of just stacking up. It was quite interesting in the background because you'd work in like sorting out all all the donations, and the amount of stuff in there is insane. I guess a lot of people just end up with, if you've got a couple like shirts or whatever you don't want or whatever belongings, you put it in the bags and just put it outside the charity shop, kind of like polite fly tipping in a way. The amount of stuff they had to sort through, and you don't realize it as well, the amount of cleaning they do, because it's all these clothes just in bags, and then half the shift would be you just cleaning, do like dry cleaning of clothes just so you can set out into the shop. So,
and a lot of it gets thrown away as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that's what I was told, because I've done it before, and they said about pretty much all this stuff's going to be shipped off to like Bulgaria or something to be made into God knows what. So.
Yeah.
So what do your mum and dad both do?
So my mum is head of clinical training for a branch in the NHS, I think. Frantically looking up my mum on LinkedIn right now. And then, speaking of my mum on LinkedIn, she sent me a birthday message on LinkedIn 3 days late. Surely of all the people, right, my mum would know when I was born. But she sent it on LinkedIn 3 days late, saying happy birthday.
Hi, Harry. I hope this message finds you well. Just wanted to give you a great deal of celebratory congratulations.
And then my dad is a photographer, and he's been doing that for years now. I think he started off as he used to tell me all these stories. He used to work with like a photographer, and they just basically travel around, kind of like freelance-esque.
Did he do any particular kind of photography, or was it just whatever people paid him to do?
I remember he did some stuff for like Coca-Cola, which is pretty cool. We've got a lot of his stuff like back home, and I've been meaning to take one of them that he did from I think it was like an old Mercedes or something. It's quite a cool shot, just framed. I need to bring it here actually. And then I think it was also quite funny because he'd also deter us, me and my brother, from going into photography, just because he's saying it's pretty much like a dying business in a way, or it's really, really difficult to get into.
Really?
Every time I picked up a camera, he's like shaking. So I'm going to be like, oh no,
you're going to get the bug.
Yeah.
In what way is it a dying? Because I would have thought, since surely it's easier than ever to take pretty good photos. Is that why it's harder to get into? Because everyone can do it.
I guess so. I guess you got a lot of Instagram photographers going around, but then I think you also look at like stuff coming up with like new technologies and AI kind of just generating all the stuff for you. Why would you need a big fancy studio, I guess, when you can just generate it on a computer now, I guess?
Yeah, but that's rubbish, isn't it? Like when you tell like those things to, give me this, and it does some kind of like Lovecraftian horror instead of what you asked it to draw.
So your dad didn't want you to be a photographer, but what did you want to be when you were little? When you were growing up?
Kind of in two minds. I did want to join the police. My mum's dad, so my granddad, was a detective for Northumberland Police. And then before I went into my current job, I had a sort of interview for the Met coming up, but I ended up not going through because I was offered where I was. And then I think I've always wanted to go into engineering. I remember in school there was a guy, like a guest speaker, came in to give a talk about engineering. And it was honestly it was like a sermon. This guy on like the pedestal talking about engineering. I just kind of thought to myself, yeah, I want to go into that.
Was that like the light bulb moment for you of like, oh, this is really cool?
Yeah. Although it was, I don't think I had the most. It was quite difficult to get the ball rolling. I think because I did all right at GCSE, and then at A level, we took a bit of an L, to be honest. For my A levels, I took maths of mechanics, physics, product design, and then history. And yeah, for year 12 A levels was not good. It was just not good. I think I failed maths, got an E in physics, and then a C in product design, and then like a C in history. I remember getting my A levels, and it was just like the worst feeling, because I remember I knew when I walked out of those exams, I was like, yeah, this is bad. And my only comforting thing, I guess, from one of the physics exams I did, it was G491, and it was called, I can't remember what it's called, but I remember the second module having a really dramatic name called like the rise and fall of the clockwork universe. And then I remember the day I got out of this exam, I can't remember how I found it. I think I was Googling other people's opinions on this paper because it was insane. I tried doing it so I went up to York for like a work trip, and I remember I was chatting to one of my colleagues who did like a physics background, and I showed him this exam paper. I was like, can you do this? Because I still need some comfort to this day about this exam paper. And I remember I got onto YouTube, and I don't know if I've shown you this, Jordan, but someone made like a rendition, or they've edited over some of the exam questions in that paper on the introduction to Saving Private Ryan. And it's one of the best YouTube videos ever.
You've never shown
It shows like the landing craft coming in, and there's someone drinking a bottle of water, and it's called like last minute revision and stuff like that. And it's just showing all the students like throwing up on the on the landing craft. It's honest. It's whoever made that really, helped me out in
That's
my time
so
of need.
niche.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. When we put this episode out, we'll share a link to that on our social media so people can go and see it. They get the interactive experience.
I have the bookmark still saved on my browser to this day, and it's how best to describe the May 2014 OCR G491 physics exam. Every now and again, I would go back and watch this video as just a little. Yeah. It's got 38,000 views. Came out 9 years ago, and I am one of the 725 people to give it a like.
It's doing numbers, man. It's going to be big.
It's doing, yeah. One day it's going to get caught up in the YouTube algorithm and have millions of views, and I can say I was there. I was one of those people.
So you struggled through your A levels.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What did you finish with in the end?
I don't know if any of you have like failed an A level before.
Never have, never will. I'm really smart. Me and Jacob are really, really smart. So
nice. I remember being in I think you kind of got to have like a bit of a reality check, and it's just like, what do I actually do from here? What are my options? Can I actually go into year 13, or do I need to start thinking about something else? And I remember being in the chatting to the teacher who ran like the exam. She was also my maths teacher, and I remember just being like, I'm sticking with it. I'm not. It's like, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. We're going into year 13, and they were like, "Are you going to carry on doing maths and physics?" And I was like, "You're goddamn right, I am." And I remember the physics teacher was begging me. She was begging me not to go into A2 physics because I heard it was rough. We're still with OCR, the devil exam board, and they're horrible exams. And it's just like, she was like, "No, maybe don't drop product design because you did it. You got a C in that, and that's pretty good. Maybe you should drop physics and think about doing something else." I was just like, "Nah, it's not happening. I'm carrying. You'll see me in your physics classes, and I would be there." And I remember I had to resit AS maths, which I think went pretty well because I'd already done it, but not very well. And I was like, "Oh, I know the answer to these questions. I just didn't put them down in the exam paper." So yeah, and then I carried on. I just carried on with history. I quite liked history actually. So I think overall, when I finished year 13, I think I got like a B in maths. In AS, we got a D in physics, which was a bit better than the E, and we carried on with a C in A level history, and then a C in AS product design. So then I took like a year out to do A2 maths in my own time with a tutor, and I think I got like a C overall in that, and that was enough to get me on my foundation mechanical engineering course.
And where was that?
Northumbria in Newcastle.
I've heard very good things about Newcastle as a university city.
Oh yeah, it's great. I was there for 5 years, but I think I'd been going up to Newcastle all my life because my nan lived outside Morpeth. Well, she lived in Morpeth, which was about like a 15-minute drive away. So I've been going up there. Yeah, it was quite nice to go somewhere quite familiar.
So did you, keeping it on trend, did you have any jobs in uni?
I guess prior to uni, so I guess if we're going back to the chronology, so we got a charity shop for like 6 months or something. Then I got a job in a supermarket, which I stayed for about 4.5 years. 4.5 years on the supermarket front lines, which I also carried on at uni because they let me transfer to the branch up in Newcastle. So yeah, I don't know if either of you two have worked in a supermarket before.
Actually, I haven't. No, I've never worked in a supermarket.
It's a lot of manual labor. It really is a lot of manual. So I got to work on, when I first joined, I was put on like fruit and veg. The supermarket was quite big, and it was it's like working on a construction site. It was tough. Like the amount of stock you had to move was crazy. and then the delivery would just come in, and it was just like endless. Especially when you get round to like Christmas time. My God, working on fruit and veg, knackered, absolutely knackered at the end of that.
So especially parsnips, potatoes.
Brussels sprouts.
Potatoes specifically, the amount, like, especially Christmas, you got loads of them coming in, and then the amount of stock you'd have to put out, and it was just heavy. So yeah, a lot of sprouts. For me personally, I think everyone should work in, at least for some time, should work in a supermarket or some form of hospitality. I think that should be like modern day, like, conscription is, okay, you're 16 or whatever, it's time to get you in a supermarket. Tesco's are crying out, they need you. Iceland's, they're fighting some demons in there or something, sort them out.
Yeah, I never worked in hospitality.
I think it kind of gives you some good personal skills. I was telling Jordan about this before. I didn't join any societies at uni, but when I was working at, like, up there, my shifts were like 5:30 till 10:30, Friday night and Saturday night, which didn't really matter at uni because you can go out any night. But because I worked with a lot of other students, people sort of similar age, that was like my social. Was kind of like going into work and cracking on with just whoever I was working with, just stocking the shelves, whatever, just having a chat about what you've been up to, and then going over to the pub over the road, which would then probably lead into like a night out or something. And then that was like my social, and I made some good mates from it as well. So, and it helped me pay uni rent as well. So,
how much do you say like your average person who does a job like that at university makes from it, like per week?
I was doing 10 hours a week, and per month I was getting around like 250 quid.
That's not a lot of money, is it?
But I think the thing is, in Newcastle,
well,
rent was
true.
like, for me, I remember one year I was paying rent of like 300 and something pounds a month. I was paying for rent. So, about like a good 80% of that was getting paid by just working at.
Yeah.
The 5 years in Newcastle, was that the foundation year, the degree, and then the placement?
Yeah. So it was didn't do a master's. So it was just, the foundation year, which I don't know. I don't think I think I could have gone into first year straight away, but I didn't have the grades to do that. The foundation year was pretty like, when they went over like some like pretty basic stuff, it was kind of like GCSE maths a bit over again. It serves a purpose, right, to help you get, because once you do the foundation year, you're guaranteed to get on to the course itself.
What was the placement like? What was that like?
I think this was pretty good, like, eye-opening moment, because this was like first time working in like an end. So I got to work on a chemical plant. So the company manufactured chipboard, and then the part that I worked in was their resin plant, which would manufacture resin in reactors, and they would use that to basically bind all the chips together to make chipboard. This would be like my first 9-to-5 job, because the supermarket was like 5:30 in the afternoon till 10:30 at night, or you do an early shift and start at like 7 in the morning, or sometimes earlier. So it was quite nice to have like a normal time scale. Yeah, I think it was interesting. It was a lot. So my course was in mechanical engineering, and this was very much like chemical and process engineering. And I felt like I had missed something on my course, because you'd think in mechanical engineering you'd learn about valves, pumps, pipes, and all this stuff. You don't. Why you don't do that, to me, is a joke. And whoever writes these courses needs to please, if they're listening, put something in about valves, pumps, and pipes. Please, I'm begging you. And I remember I was walking around, and someone asked me, he's like, do you know much about like valves? Do you know much about? I was just like, nope. I don't know anything about this. Have I really gone here and don't know anything about this? I was just like, no. Then the chem eng guy, he was like, yeah, this is textbook chem eng. Yeah, I know all this. And I was like, please tell me. Please give me a textbook or something. But yeah, no, I think I did quite enjoy it. It was very like quite hands-on with some of the stuff we had to do. So I think every 8 months they'd have to do like a catalyst change. So this was used to make formaldehyde on site, which is very nasty stuff. It's got a very unique smell. Apparently you're not meant to breathe it in. It's carcinogenic. I remember I took this plate off the formaldehyde tower, got a big waft of it, and I was just like, that's not very nice. So yeah, you got to strip down the tower, to do all the maintenance on it. I got to do some welding. That was pretty cool. And then yeah, I remember I started, they were like, here's the 3 projects we want you to do it throughout the year. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good. I knew at the end of it I didn't want to work in resin manufacturing because I think regardless of what I worked on there, it was improving the efficiency of manufacturing resin. And I was just like, I'm a bit glued out at the end of this. I don't want to be doing this anymore. But I think it was some really good work experience. And first time working on like engineering like projects, you get to see how it works. You're taught at uni about, bam, the iron triangle.
What's the iron triangle?
It's like cost, scope, and time. And then you get to see that's all the three things that make up a project. And you get to see that in person. And then COVID hit and I got furloughed. And that was...
You got furloughed from your placement?
I did. It was fantastic. I loved furlough. I think, COVID, it was... I think a lot of people did have quite a rough time in like lockdowns. But personally for me, lockdown 1, take me back. Take me back. It was peak summer in Newcastle. I'd been furloughed from work. And it was just like every day was a barbecue. Me and my housemates outside having a few beers in a garden, not out in the garden. We weren't breaking social distancing rules. We were in our garden having a barbecue and we just had beers. It was great.
So did you get to complete your placement then? If it was put on hold?
My placement was from June 2019 to July 2020. So I got furloughed in May or April 2020. And I think the running joke was we're back at work in 2 weeks. I went back to work in July. And it was quite nice because they said, okay, we just want you to like wrap up some things just so that you can say you kind of like tick this off. Then they gave me like the flexibility to work from home as well.
So they sent the formaldehyde round to your house.
And they said, don't breathe it in.
Don't breathe it in, yeah. And, me missing the plant, I just, I just went, big inhale. So it was quite nice because they gave me like a couple of weeks just to like wrap some stuff up just to put, so I could put like a stamp on it and kind of like, it's not just, you're furloughed and then you're leaving. It's okay, we'll bring you back for a bit just so you can have like an exit period, which I thought was quite good because it did kind of let me like mentally say, okay, yeah, that's done. Then go back to uni. I would recommend if anyone is thinking about doing a placement, absolutely. I think it's probably one of the best things you can do at uni because I think a lot of people come out with university with like no work experience. And then if you're applying for a job and you've got like a year's placement, I think it gives you such an advantage. And then it gives you so much you can talk about in an interview as well. So I'm a mechanical engineer and I work in nuclear
there's
power.
A surprise.
Yeah. And I work in nuclear power now.
And now you are Homer J. Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
Now you work at the nuclear power plant.
Be surprised it's not the first time I've heard that joke. But no, I do actually work at a nuclear power plant. I work in like a consultancy.
Because me and you have had conversations before about, because you've heard it so much from people when you say about nuclear power, because I did the same thing to you where you said nuclear power and I went, oh, that's dangerous. That sounds dangerous.
See, this literally happened to me the other weekend. I was in London and then I was chatting. I stayed at my friend's, and then her mate, who she also lives with, was like, "Oh, what do you do?" I say, "I work in nuclear power." And he's like, "We're talking about net zero," and he's like, "Oh, that's not very net zero, is it?" And I said, "Listen, Tom, this is the problem. People like you don't know. You don't know." But sorry, carry on. Yeah, it is.
So
there's a misconception. Sorry, what was that?
So explain what's the misconception?
People think that nuclear power is like, you're gonna get like a third eye from radioactivity, and then people just assume that it's really, really dangerous. I think it just gets a bit of a bad rep from the incidents of like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and all that kind of stuff have kind of really ingrained into like the public perception. It's a massive impact on it. It can be dangerous, but the amount of like safety systems and safety culture engineering involved in it, it's not. And I think it's really trying to get the public involved in that. Sorry, that was... Yeah.
No, it's okay.
That's fine. That's fine.
That's what you're here for, Harry.
Yeah.
We want to. If you want to tell us about nuclear power, then this is the time to do it.
Okay. I guess the main way it's done is like nuclear fission. I guess you know how that works.
No.
Okay.
No.
So you get like, so the way the reactor works is, if I get things wrong, I do apologize, but hey, you guys won't know that. So you get like your fuel, which is like your uranium 235 or whatever, which is like an isotope of uranium. And then what you do is it interacts with like a neutron. You guys know what neutrons are, right? So you got in an atom, you've got protons, neutrons, and electrons. You take like a neutron, and then that like atomically reacts with the uranium fuel, undergoes nuclear fusion because the element becomes unstable because it's got too many neutrons in it, and then it decays into other materials called like fission fragments. And then that process of nuclear fission, fusion, that's another thing. Nuclear fission releases an incredible amount of energy, and then you basically use that to create steam, and then that steam drives a turbine, and that's how you get electricity. It's exactly the power cycles involved, and then it's very similar to how a coal plant works, right? You burn coal, boils water, creates steam drives a turbine. It's the exact same thing in a fission reactor, except you're using a different type of fuel, and there's other stuff involved in that. You're just taking your fuel, which has a much higher energy density, so you get more energy, more energy per kilogram of fuel, creating more power, more steam, drives your turbines. Bam, you can charge your iPhone.
And I'm guessing it's more sustainable.
Yeah,
would you say, or is there like a limited supply of uranium? I don't know.
Technically, yes, but I think like the amount of like energy like you get out of, I can't remember what the exact amount is, but you know, from like a certain, like the amount of fuel that you actually use in fission is quite small relatively to if you compared it to like coal, because it's so energy dense. The amount of power that you get out of the fission reaction, you're probably not going to run out of uranium. What's also interesting is, yes, uranium is finite, but I think the way, if you look, I got into a bit of a rabbit hole about looking at like neutron stars on YouTube, and then how basically as a result of like neutron stars going into supernova, that's how you actually originally get like your elements in the Earth. And then
I love a neutron star.
Yeah. I would recommend, there's a guy on YouTube who does like a really good video on neutron stars. It's actually really interesting. But you can kind of stem back that eventually like the uranium on Earth would have come from a supernova to do with like a neutron star. So, but yeah, you wouldn't need to worry about us running out of uranium probably anytime soon.
But I am worried, Harry.
Well, I'm telling you should be. So yeah, I think nuclear power's got quite an interesting history in like the world and the UK. Really.
So you're not rolling up your sleeves every day and climbing into a nuclear reactor or anything. It's much more
rolling up
office based.
Yeah, it's a lot more office based.
Sitting down at a desk.
Yeah, there are options to work on like site if you want to. I did do some site visits, not really to a nuclear facility, but like a semiconductor manufacturing place. That was quite interesting, quite reminiscent of going on to placement, because what I do on placement is you look at like P&IDs, piping and instrumentation diagrams, going around site that's being built. Does this match up with what's been designed in-house? You know, is this valve in the right place? Is this pump in the right place? Is this the correct material is this piping being installed correctly? And you get to chat to the contractors. The few Geordie contractors got to chat to, got to reminisce about Newcastle. That was good crack. But yeah, there is the option if I wanted to go work on the site. I think I can.
And is the aim of your job to make it easier to build like new nuclear power plants, or is it to kind of maintain and repair existing ones? Or...
So in the UK, plants in the UK are actually going into decommissioning because they were originally called Magnox reactors, and these are boiling water reactors. And this stemmed from the fact that there's, after World War II and all the Manhattan projects and all that, a lot of information to do with nuclear assets was scrapped and just hidden because they didn't want it getting into, quote unquote, the wrong hands. So a lot of people had to redesign how we're actually going to use nuclear applications. So in the UK, because they couldn't enrich our uranium fuel, we had to do what was called Magnox reactors. And these are kind of like, they're called boiling water reactors. And they're essentially like kettles, basically. But for instance, the US and Canada could enrich their fuel. They made pressurized water reactors. And so within the UK, we have a lot of these Magnox reactors that are now gone into decommissioning. So a lot of the reactors in the UK, I think were built in like the 50s or whatever. So a lot of the stuff we do at work is like helping with the decommissioning of that. So how do you actually safely get rid of all the waste that was generated by these? And how do we actually, is there anything that we can repurpose here? But around the world, the modern reactor is the pressurized water reactor. So we do some stuff to do with those. But me specifically, I get quite cool stuff. I get to look at nuclear fusion and do stuff with advanced reactors. So your generation 4 reactors. So yeah, we do a lot of stuff to do with nuclear based on most like reactor types. But yeah, if I wanted to get involved in stuff to do with pressurized water reactors, which I partly do, I could do that. But my primary focus is to look into nuclear fusion, which I think is a bit more exciting, a bit more interesting.
And do you imagine that you'll continue in the kind of working on nuclear stuff for the foreseeable future?
It's a good question. I think so. I'm on a grad scheme which lasts 3 years. I think right now I'll play out the grad scheme for 3 years, see what happens. I think it's quite cool because I get to go on like a variety of stuff I get to work on. I'm finding the stuff to do with fusion a lot more interesting, and that's the team that I work in. And fusion's quite a big up and coming thing that hopefully gets. Do you guys know anything about nuclear fusion?
Not well. I know that it's the thing that if we could crack it, it would make the generation of nuclear power a lot more efficient and better. But I don't know what you're fusing together exactly.
So it has the word nuclear in it, but the process is very different from how fission works. So if you imagine fission is like splitting up atoms, fusion is just bringing them together. So what you do is you use hydrogen. I guess for those who don't know, where the sun operates on nuclear fusion, but the sun can cheat. Do you guys know why the sun can cheat?
Because it's really so big and heavy.
Correct. Because it's so big and heavy, gravity is so intense that it can force these like nuclides to go together. But here on planet Earth, we don't have that ability. So we use incredibly very, 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 very high temperatures of around 200 million degrees for this to occur. And it occurs in the fourth state of matter, which is a plasma, which is just it's just a charged gas, basically.
200 million degrees.
200 million was the record that was recently set.
Wow. I mean, I think the center of the sun is only about 15 million, isn't it?
Yeah, it's someone made a really interesting point actually, because you also use like cryogenic systems in fusion plants, which is like looking at scales of like 10 Kelvin. So for instance, 0 is the lowest you can go on the Kelvin scale, which is equivalent to minus 273.5, I think, degrees C. So imagine temperatures of like minus 265 degrees is how cold you're talking. And at that point, it's pretty chilly. So if you
that'd be lovely.
Yeah.
That'd be, I'd walk around in a t-shirt in that. That'd be wicked for me.
Yeah. It's my uni mate, housemate said, it's always shorts weather. So, if I was surrounded by minus 265 degrees, you can bet your bottom socks or whatever. You can bet whatever. I'm still wearing shorts. But yeah, if you have those...
I think at that temperature, you would just freeze and shatter into pieces, wouldn't you? So,
well, actually, I don't really know.
What a way to go.
I think the whole point of like absolute zero, right, is particles have no energy. So if you imagine anything, they're always vibrating. They have energy. For absolute zero, they have nothing. They're not moving at all. Has no energy, which is, I guess, kind of theoretically impossible. The analogy someone made that was really interesting is that in a fusion plant, if you've got these cryogenic temperatures and you've got the plasma at that high temperature, you have probably the largest temperature gradient or temperature difference in the universe. That's mental. That's actually mental. So with fusion, what you do is you take, do you know what isotopes are?
I've heard of them.
Are different
Go on, Jacob.
different elements, but with different numbers of protons. No, different numbers of neutrons.
Correct. Yeah, they have different number. They have a different number of neutrons. If they had a different number of protons, they'd be different elements. So the reason hydrogen and helium are different is because they have a different number of protons. So, but with hydrogen, it has one proton and one electron. If you add one neutron to that, you get deuterium. It's called hydrogen 2. If you have another neutron onto that, you get tritium, hydrogen 3. And what you do is you take deuterium and tritium, heat them up. You get your plasma, then you cryogenically cool them, fire them into a plasma, and then you cross your fingers and you hope that they then fuse together. And then that process releases more energy than fission, significantly more. And then the idea is then you would capture that, and then you would use some form of power cycle to then generate steam again and drive a turbine. In the UK, we're looking at doing that in a device called a tokamak, which uses magnets. It's called get 2 types of fusion. You get magnetic confinement and inertial confinement. And in magnetic confinement, you have your plasma, and you use magnets to basically confine and shape your plasma. Heat that up to around nice tepid 200 odd million degrees, put your fuel in there, pray that they fuse together, and then that process releases a lot of energy, and then we capture that, and then put that into a turbine.
Then Bob's your uncle.
And then you plug your PC in, and then you play an Elden Ring. Hey, use my Tekken token. What are you gonna do about it? Huh? You're gonna disconnect me?
And now, Harry, we come on to the final section of the podcast when we work together to find you your dream job. Just in case you already have one, do you already have a dream job in mind?
Dream job? Good question. I think I'd want to stay in engineering and then get quite senior in that. I think to be chief engineer, I think would be sick.
Like
just
CTO.
the title alone. Yeah, just like having chief in the name, that would be good. And then, I'm still, it's still nagging at the back of my mind is detective in the police. It's still there, which I think is still quite insane to me. That I think it's only because my granddad did it. And, I do like my job, but then, sometimes you're at desk all the time, and then it'd be quite nice to just be out and about, I think. So I do think, progressing engineering is what I want to do. But then I hear, Matthew McConaughey from True Detective whispering, all right. Come detective. It's there. So
it's kind of like you want to, be the chief technology officer at the company that cracks nuclear fusion, but then you go home from work and suddenly you're a detective.
You moonlight as a detective.
I don't know if it's necessarily be like, CTO or whatever. I think just quite like it.
Well, that's the thing, because you said you wanted chief in your title. Chief is also something you get called if you get high up in the police. Like, all right, chief.
Yeah, maybe what I should do is find a middle ground between engineering and detective stuff, and just become like, an like a health and safety inspector or something like that.
So would that be working for maybe like a nuclear safety regulator or something?
Yeah,
so maybe
I think you could do like
in...
So there's the ONR, which is a nuclear regulator, and then there's HSC, health and safety executive, and they send. I remember when I was on placement, actually, the HSC were coming to visit, and it's kind of like Ofsted coming to school. To be honest, it was just like, right, let's no more breathing in this formaldehyde, guys. I'm not doing that anymore.
But would you not be more interested in the kind of technical side? Because I guess HSC would come in and check that are your staff going to be in danger, but I guess you'd probably want to go in and actually look at like the mechanics of it all and work out whether that's safe.
I think there are. I think there are elements for HSC that probably would do that. I see what you mean. I think that kind of like an auditor in a way, I guess. I think for that. I think that would be quite an interesting thing to do, just because you get that kind of the technical engineering side to it, and then that kind of policing in a way, because you're the engineer police.
Yeah.
So you get your badge and your gun.
Yeah. It's just like a laser thermostat, really.
Yeah.
But you do have a license to kill.
Yeah.
James Bond.
Yeah.
Walk straight in, shoot the reactor, it blows up.
Yeah. It could be like, I open up my trench coat, and there's just like something there, just like a little valve that measures pressure in that line. I'm like, I will use this. I will check if you're at 2 bar, buddy. If you're not, you're coming with me.
What about if you had this job where you're this engineering specialist safety auditor for nuclear plants, but your first assignment is to go to Chernobyl a few days before what happened there?
Do you think you
that
could
would
crack
be
the case?
interesting? I don't know. I think Chernobyl's actually interesting. I've actually been watching the TV show Chernobyl, and it does a pretty good like summary of like what happened, albeit a bit like dramatization to it. But I think that'd be quite interesting if you had the knowledge of RBMK reactors, and if you knew that they were like baffling in their design, and you were the auditor who went around and think like, what is this? I think that would be really interesting if you were the guy who stopped Chernobyl from happening. Yeah, that'd be quite cool.
So is that your dream job? The guy that stops Chernobyl from happening?
Yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe not. But yes, maybe I would actually want to. If we could stop it happening, that would.
Well, that's an interesting point, because surely Chernobyl was one of the things that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, and so if you stopped it from happening, you might really change the whole course of
history.
the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't want to do that.
Do you guys know why Chernobyl happened?
Is it
AZ5. They pressed AZ5. That's the name of. That's what it was called, wasn't it? The safety switch that ended up just blowing it up itself, like the fail safe. And there was I can't remember. I mean, I've watched the TV show as well, so that's what I know that from.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because they were using a fission reactor, and what you need to promote fission happening, you need to use a moderator. Because as a result of when we undergo fission, you release what's called a fast neutron. If you imagine this neutron is going at such high speeds, the likelihood that it interacts with any more uranium fuel is quite low because it's going so quick. So we use a moderator, and what this moderator does is it slows down neutrons, and then this makes you increase the probability that a neutron will then interact with your uranium fuel. So I use water in reactors. Water is an absolutely amazing moderator of neutrons. You can also use graphite. Graphite is also a moderator. But what happened in Chernobyl, they were doing a low power scenario test, and RBMK's reactors have what's called a positive void coefficient. You can I can't explain it, just look it up. And then because they were operating at low power, what happened is when they use control rods, which is also to say your reaction is going super critical, which isn't necessarily like a bad thing. It just means you're getting quite a lot of fission reactions happening. You can lower the control rods in, and what these control rods do is they absorb neutrons so that they're not interacting with your uranium fuel. So you're stopping the fission reaction from happening. The RBMK reactors, their control rods at the tip of them had graphite. Graphite is a moderator of neutrons. RBMK reactors are unstable at low power. So as soon as they press that AZ5 button, control rods come in. First thing that the neutrons interact with is graphite, then cause a massive surge in power, cause it to explode. Why you use graphite on control rods? Not really sure about that one. If you look into the positive void coefficient, I think it's to do with as you increase your temperature, your power goes up, and they keep bouncing from each other and keeps going up and up. But in modern reactors, you have what's called a negative void coefficient, and because the good thing about water is that as you increase it, it expands. So as you increase the temperature, your power goes down. Then the power falls down, the temperature goes up, and then it kind of bounces back up, and it kind of fluctuates between the two, and is what's called passive safety. So you get different tiers of safety. So you get administrative safety would be me doing something manually. You get engineered safety, which is just using machines to control stuff. So when temperature reaches X, valve shuts off, stops this from happening. Administrative safety would be me going and doing it myself. It's safer for the machine could fail, but then you have redundancy. That's something else kicks in instead. So engineered safety is the valve electronically shutting off. Then you get passive safety, which obeys the laws of physics. Then above that is intrinsic safety. Now we're talking. I actually can't remember what intrinsic safety actually is, but that's the next level of. It's the next level up. It's the next level up from passive safety.
You started that as if it was your one great love in life, intrinsic safety, and it's actually, I got no idea what it is.
Yeah. It's that's the next level up. And that's it.
So I'm getting the feeling here that if we could marry the two, if we could bring safety, detective skills into nuclear fusion, that would be the ideal scenario.
Could be. I also quite like going into the technical side of things, actually getting into the numbers and nitty gritty of we're going to design X, Y, Z. We're going to use this because of this flow rate. We're going to look at use this power cycle.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that, you've become senior. So you've just kept working, in nuclear power. You've become really expert at it. Then you have a little bit of a career change and you say, okay, now that I've got all this knowledge, I'm going to go into doing these inspections. Mm-hmm. So you're working for HSE or the Nuclear Safety Watchdog, or whoever it is.
Well, here's the thing. Whoever becomes the regulator for fusion. Yeah. Me.
Yeah. Yeah, just a one-man band,
Yeah.
So,
a lot of work someone's got to do it.
Yeah, so you go in there, they have to let you in. You can just turn up at the gates at night. You can come in, wander around the place. You can ask them any questions about anything they have to answer. You can get them in a room, and it's all, you can do all that. You can use your people skills.
Yeah.
You can shine the lamp. You can be good cop or bad cop, depending on what you want. And then because you have all this technical knowledge, if you notice anything that's not right, you can start getting into the detail and saying, right, you need to change this, you need to do this, da 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 da. So you can still have that kind of hands-on engineering skill, but you've got your detective side of things as well, because you're basically like a nuclear detective.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And I guess the only thing we're missing is the feeling of, at the end of the day, you're like, right, let's go across the road to the pub. So maybe, do you want that? You have like a few maybe more junior inspectors who come along with you.
Yeah.
And they kind of, they just do whatever you don't want to do while you're there. And at the end of the night, when you've done all your interviews, like, grilling all the kind of people working at the plant, you're like, right,
have a beer
across the road to...
Yeah, as long as it isn't spiraled into like raging alcoholism, then great.
Yeah.
As long as it's like,
you can sit at the bar and you can swill a whiskey and think about the case. Yeah.
I want to know what you're wearing. I'm imagining like a kind of like a police uniform, but with a few like nuclear kind of twists to it. Like like you've got like instead of like the badge on the cap, it's like a kind of diagram, or maybe like a nuclear like hazard symbol or something.
Yeah.
Like, what if you could design your uniform for when you're showing up in the dead of night?
Yeah, they could always be like on my sleeve could be like a dosimeter or something, always showing me how much radiation I'm being exposed to. As soon as that dial goes up a little bit too far for my liking.
And that's when heads are getting slammed. Could you have like almost like a holster, like a gun holster, but it's a Geiger counter?
Yeah.
And you can pull that out.
Yeah, I'm wearing like a lead vest the entire time just to stop the amount of radiation I'm being exposed to. Yeah.
So I don't know how a nuclear power plant works exactly, but I imagine that there'll be times when people who work there have to be doing really long shifts. They might be there for multiple days, and therefore they probably have to like bring in food and things to have while they're there. So what if when you show up sometimes to do this job, they're like, at the same time, they've received a great big shipment of like potatoes and carrots and parsnips and things. And they're like, oh, sorry, while you're here, could you just help us to bring this all into the kitchen and stack it up on the shelves and everything? Like if you had to do that every now and then, would you still be happy to do that? I mean, going back to your roots a little bit.
Back to your vegetable roots.
Yeah, I'd probably, look up, take one toke of my cigarette, snuff out and be like, let's get to it, boys. Let's get to it. Shelves aren't going to stack themselves.
Okay, so you'd be humble, you'd be quite a humble guy.
For old time's sake.
Yeah, you'd be going in and you'd be like, you're kind of being a bit, even when you're kind of being bad cop, you're still
this
like,
is where
okay.
I'm one step ahead of you, Jacob, because I always carry my trusty supermarket apron with me just for these cases. So
okay.
So you can whip it on.
I'd spin around on the spot and do a quick outfit change and be ready.
Like in the Sims.
And then I'd be ready to just, at any point in my life, ready to stack the shelves.
But they probably couldn't bring in bananas though, could they?
Why? Is this...
Because bananas are radioactive.
Oh. That's why I eat 10 million bananas a day. So
They are though, aren't they? I'm not just making that up. I'm sure they're like more radioactive than your average fruit.
To do this, yeah. I think it's.
Is that why they're green when they start out? Because they're like glowing, like uranium.
Yeah, just being hit with like electrons and helium particles all the time. Yeah.
So would you actually accept this job if it were offered to you, assuming like, this is when you've done, like you've become like the principal engineer or whatever.
Chief.
Would you accept that going into that, and that's your job until retirement? Would you accept that?
Yeah.
Okay, there's some doubt there. So what could we do to make it so that you're a bit more like, yeah, definitely I would accept that? Because you seem a little bit like you're hesitating. Is there some aspects of what you enjoy in work that you don't have in this?
A late night bakery, to be honest. Yeah.
we can do that.
We can
get the pub. Okay, how about the pub
also sells pastries?
Also sells world-class pastries.
Yeah, I'd like that.
So it's perfect now, is it?
Yeah. It's like a petrol station where they have like a Subway in it. It's like you've got a pub that's also just got a Greggs in the back or something like that.
Yeah, I think, on a side note, I think Greggs is probably, if you're looking at like, fast food takeaways, would you class Greggs as a fast food takeaway? I think so.
I guess so, yeah.
I would say not, because it's not made to order. The stuff's already there. It's already made, and you just order it out of the hot. You know. But
Yeah.
if you go to like McDonald's, they make your burger when you order it. Or so that's the difference for me.
Okay.
Well then I quit. This is a resigning matter, Jacob.
Yeah. I'd put if we're going with Harry's model of it being a take or fast food takeaway, I'd put Greg's probably like number one.
Well, if you're happy then, should we shake on it? We've given you your dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Come in. I'm here. Until retirement.
All right. Well, there we go. That's part of why we do this. We want to find people their dream jobs. So remember us when you're showing up in the rain outside the gates of a nuclear power plant.
If either of you are, running a nuclear power plant in the future, and then just if it's getting late and it starts raining, you'll see like a flash of lightning and then an outline of me there, with a sausage roll.
I'm gonna have your face up on a dartboard in the power plant, and I'll be like, I pray that he never shows up throwing darts at the ball.
Well, that was very exciting, Jordan. I am buzzing with nuclear energy.
I'll tell you what, I'm full of atoms. Full of atoms after that one.
Absolutely filled to the brim with atoms, I am.
Yeah, that was great. It's absolutely great. Always a pleasure talking to my flatmate. And it's even better that I get to live with him every day and chat to him.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
As you should be. But there's always the sofa bed, mate, if you change your mind.
Yeah, thanks. It makes it sound like I've said I'm never going to come round. Like, if you change your mind about staying on a sofa bed.
Don't come over, Jacob. don't come to my house.
Oh, okay.
I just want to see you on the screen. Oh, sorry, I lied. I don't want you on the sofa bed. I just want to see you on the screen.
Oh, okay. But can you put the screen on the sofa bed?
Yeah. I'll pull out the bed. I'll make the bed. I'll put the laptop on there, and then we can fall asleep together.
That sounds nice.
That does sound nice, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah. If anyone else wants to sit on Jordan's sofa bed, just go to...
Let's plug. So we've got our socials. We are Careers Mare pretty much everywhere. So we are Careers Mare Podcast on Instagram. We are at Careers Mare on TikTok. We are Careers Mare Podcast on Twitter. And we are Careers Mare on Facebook. So go give us a follow. Go give us a like. We're going to be posting a lot of good stuff on there. Also, don't forget to like this podcast on the platform that you're listening on. Give us a review as well. That'd be nice. Some honest feedback. We're very new to this. So we'd like to know how we can improve. Although I don't think we could improve personally. I think it's perfect, but other people might feel differently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to disagree with you, Jordan, but I only want you to give us a review if it's 5 stars. So don't bother if it's not.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be like honest feedback in the sense of you telling us, giving us helpful kind of advice about where we're going wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I was under the assumption that people would only be giving us 5 stars. So, and the honest feedback would be, oh my God, I love them. They're so funny. They're so charismatic. I wish that they did a podcast every second of every day that I could listen to. That's what I assume people are going to be saying.
Yeah. And also, you said we're on Twitter, or X, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook. And I believe I'm right in saying that we're also on MySpace, where our tag is, I think, House of Fraser.
Yes, yeah.
We went for something a bit different there.
Yeah, and we are we're also Woolworths on Bebo.
Yeah.
We're bringing it back. So watch this space.
Yeah, and on SoundCloud, we are Barbie Movie Official.
Yeah. Yeah, all of this has actually been written by Greta Gerwig. And you're going to be hearing our next episode, which is with Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Which, funnily enough, was actually easier to get on than Harry.
Yeah, she was actually.
Yeah.
And speaking of Margot Robbie, if you liked the theme tune, go and look up Robbie George on Instagram. He's a very good composer, and if you want to get him to make you some music, then get in touch with him on Instagram and ask him nicely, cross his palm with silver, and then maybe you'll do something.
Oh, and also a bit of a shameless plug here. I do a bit of comedy, do a bit of improv on the side. If you do want to check out anything that I'm doing or that the group I'm in is doing, we are called the Dinner Daddies. It's Dinner Daddies everywhere on socials, or Daddy's Dinner on Twitter. So go check that out as well. We've got plenty of shows coming up. And check out Harry as well next time he's in the gym, because that man puts in work and he's got a big deadlift.
What's his deadlift?
It's 1,600,000 atoms.
How much would that weigh? How much is...
If I'm actually anywhere near what his deadlift is, that would be insane.
600,000 atoms. So that would be about 2.5 times 10 to the minus 21 kilograms. So about what would that be? That would be about a billion millionth of a kilogram.
Yeah, he is really weak.
Yeah.
But he's improving every day.
Good luck to you, Harry. I hope that the fact that you're riddled with nuclear energy helps you to increase your strength. And bon voyage.
Bye-bye.